Welcome to the Hourly Podcast. In today's episode, Shawn Brunelle shares his extensive journey from starting as a delivery driver at Domino's to becoming an innovator in the pizza industry as founder and CEO of Wizardline Technologies. He discusses the challenges of hiring delivery drivers, the intricacies of their compensation, and the importance of technology in enhancing customer experience. The conversation also explores the future of delivery, balancing traditional W-2 employment with gig economy models, and how Domino's has successfully engaged its workforce through innovative practices. Enjoy.
This episode is brought to you by JoJo, an AI virtual recruiter powered by Sprockets. Designed for the hourly workforce, JoJo works 24/7 to source, screen, and schedule interviews with the best applicants for your business. JoJo helps reduce employee turnover and time spent hiring so you and your team can focus on other important tasks. To learn more, head to sprockets.ai/JoJo.
All right, Shawn, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so for those in our audience that don't know Wizardline, Shawn, your experience with Domino's, take us back to the very beginning of how you got started in this space and what you do today.
Yeah, man. So that's a long story. So as all stories start in the beginning. So I started as a driver when I was 18 for Domino's Pizza, and I've held every position in the Domino's system, from driver, assistant manager, manager, franchisee, area supervisor, and then eventually kind of outside investor in 35 stores in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And so what happened was, so I did all of that, and I was always kind of liked data number crunching and data analysis. So in 2005, when Katrina hit, gas prices went to like $4 overnight. Everyone's discretionary income disappeared. And so sales were down in the quick service industry as a whole. But during that time, we put into place some policies and procedures that made us successful through that. And then in 2006, we kind of flew around the country, kind of best practice sharing what we were doing. The problem was what we were doing was kind of proprietary in nature and couldn't be recreated without what would eventually become Wizardline Technologies, which is an above store data platform for more than 6,500 Domino's pizza stores in the U.S. and Canada. And that's kind of how we started.
Yeah,
from the
it's
ground up.
incredible, right? To start at the delivery driver and then work your way all the way up. Talk to me a little bit about what you learned in that first role, right? Because I know with Domino's particular and pizza in particular, staffing for drivers is very different than other positions. Like, what were some of your key takeaways from those very early days of that job in particular?
Yeah, so I don't think I would be where I am today or be able to provide the services I did if I didn't have that operational background. And so what I'm able to pair is kind of that operational background, and then with the tech side. Because a lot of times someone will give me a report or a feature that they want, and the first question I'll ask them is, well, what are you trying to accomplish? And then once they tell me that, then sometimes I'll be like, well, that's not going to show you what you need. And so we're able to save people time. Whereas if I was just a tech guy, nothing wrong with that. But if I was just a tech guy, I would just build what they asked for and then deliver them a product that ultimately didn't meet their goals. So I think I lost sight of the question there for a second. But so it was, what makes hiring a driver more difficult?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So and
maybe just for the audience, give a general outlook of what being a driver at Domino's entails, like salary, how the tip system works, what their day-to-day is, and why it's
so there's a bunch of different ways. There's a bunch of different ways there. And so a driver receives their hourly wage, whatever that happens to be. Sometimes it's less than minimum wage. Sometimes it is minimum wage, depending upon the state. And then in addition to that, they have 3 other income streams, if you will. So some of it is meant to reimburse expenses such as mileage. So they get a certain number of certain cents per mile that they drive.
Is that set by government standards or Domino standards?
So Domino's doesn't set Domino's corporate doesn't set any of the standards for their franchisees as far as what they have to pay.
Got it.
So there is a company called Modus that the Domino's Franchise Association, the DFA, partners with, that franchisees can use, that will take an inventory of your driver fleet to determine what kind of cars they're driving, whether it's a new car, an electric car, a big, gas guzzler, and then they will help you determine the rate that you should be paying. Not everyone uses that, but it's most franchisees do.
Got it.
So that's kind of how that rate is set, and then it obviously slides up and down depending upon where gas prices
Yeah. So you
are.
got hourly wage. Then you said the second was mileage. What's the third?
Yeah, and so they're also using their cell phones now for a lot of stuff, such as so Domino's has a driver app that makes delivery for that driver much more efficient, as well as feedback to the customer that your order is like 2 minutes away. That the whole driver tracker aspect, and so we also reimburse our drivers for their use of their mobile phone.
Hmm.
And so that's a certain percentage per hour that they work, a certain number of cents per hour. And again, Modus has a calculation for that. They also do that for the franchisees as well.
And how many drivers do you have per location compared to people who are actually making pizzas? Talk to me
Yeah,
about
so
that.
obviously it varies from location to location, but as a general rule, you'll have two drivers for every inside position, whether that inside position is a CSR, someone answering the phones, making pizzas, or a member of the management staff. So generally speaking, if you had 6 people inside making pizzas, you can expect to need 10 to 12 drivers on the road during that time. It changes from store to store, but that's we're mainly a delivery business still, although um, we kind of have three sectors for sales revenue right now in the Domino system. One being the delivery mechanism, naturally. The second being a carryout, and more recently, the third being aggregators, such as Uber Eats. So we receive an income stream from Uber Eats, from our carryout sales, and from our delivery sales. And that's kind of the strategy going forward, is building those three buckets.
Yeah, what's interesting too is from a recruiting perspective, you have to be a little bit more fine of who you allow to drive because naturally you need a driver's license.
Mhm.
You have to be of certain age. Do you have to just be 16 or you just have to license or to be a delivery driver you have to hit a 21 or how
Yeah,
is that?
so the Domino's has very strict standards. You do have to be at least 18 years of age, but in
18.
addition to that, you have to have, even at 18, you have to have so many driving years of experience. I believe it's 12 months, but I haven't
Oh well.
looked at the
Okay.
exact standard in a while. And then in addition to that, you have to have a clean driving record, which for the most part means no more than two moving violations of some form, whether that um, be speeding, failure to stop, or an at-fault accident in 2 years, and no more than three of those in 3 years.
And then do you have
Um,
to have your own car or do franchisees typically have a fleet or rent or I'm sure you've seen everything, but what do
yeah,
most people
so typically, historically, it's been the drivers provide their own vehicle. Um, More and more, especially as what's called non-owned insurance for drivers, because Domino's franchisees have to carry, I believe it's called non-owned insurance, which
Yeah.
covers the drivers driving their own car and liability. So anyway, that has gotten somewhat out of control price-wise, and so what we've seen recently are franchisees that have their own fleet of vehicles, and the drivers come in and they're able to use those in lieu of their personal vehicle.
Yeah. So
But
like
the but but by far most people still bring their vehicle to the job.
yeah, I know you're a numbers cruncher, as you already stated, and I know you personally, so I know that's the case. Like, if you were to start a 10 location Domino's, would you have your own fleet, or would you have people do it independently?
I think you need a little bit of both, and it depends upon the location. So, for example, campus and military stores,
Yeah,
where you have team members who may not have access to vehicles, you'll need a fleet of vehicles there more than you would kind of a rural store out in the countryside, where everyone kind of needs a vehicle to get around.
yeah.
So location of those stores certainly matters. Um, but if I was to start with 10, I'd probably have like two or three per location, and that would handle most of your business. Uh, obviously it wouldn't during the peak hours on a Friday, Saturday, but that would get you probably 75-80% of the way there.
Yeah, the reason why I'm digging into this delivery driver topic is like at the book Hourly in the podcast, we talk about like the humanization of workers and like giving light to those that service us in ways that we don't realize on a day to day. And delivery
Hmm.
driver is like the perfect example of that, right? It's like you go to an app, you deliver food, and it magically appears. And we don't
Yeah.
always think about the person or people who make that possible. So, Sean, given your experience, from top to bottom, bring us through just like the day of a life of a delivery driver. Like they wake up, they start their shift. Like how many drives are they doing? How many miles are they driving? And I'm gonna ask the last question: is how much should people really tip delivery drivers? Because I know this is a hot topic on the internet right now.
Yeah. First of all, I agree with people in general that tip culture's kind of gotten crazy recently,
Yeah,
where everyone's looking for a tip. Um, but so you had a bunch of questions there, and
yeah,
a lot of so I want to cover some kind of talk. So within a Domino's pizza store, anyway, they have a delivery and service area that they're contractually allowed to service, and it's either 8 minutes or 9 minutes. I forget the exact number. So from the store to the furthest place, it's not a mileage; it's a time. The most a driver can go in one direction is I'm just going to say 8 minutes for the purpose of this conversation. Eight
got
minutes. Anything beyond that, it becomes prohibitive from the ability to service that customer, but also other customers. I mean, if you're driving 15 minutes one way, then it's like, first of all, that customer didn't get an optimum experience. But secondly, all of the customers after them also didn't, because that driver was out of service, so to speak,
yeah,
for a prolonged period of time. So generally, and again, it depends. Like campus stores, you could be. We have some stores that deliver on bicycle because the area is so tight. So you can expect people to deliver. I would say no more than roughly 4 miles round trip on average.
Hmm.
So, like I said, I started as a driver. I thought it was great. You'd show up for work, and you'd listen to your radio all day as you just kind of delivered and brought food to people's houses. Um, but as far as tipping, I think the usual, of anywhere 15, 20, 25% is a general rule. Drivers get, whether you're paying by credit card or you're paying cash, they get all of their tips. It's not, um, like there's really no difference to the team member how you tip them. And I also think, quite frankly, like time of day or weather conditions,
Yeah,
the date, the day, like all of that should matter in how you tip your driver. I will say, if you're don't don't punish your driver if the pizza gets there later than you wanted, because chances are it's not their fault. It's don't
right.
punish the driver because it took 45 minutes to get your pizza rather than 25.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And then from a wage perspective, like take home money,
Mhm.
delivery driver that works 12 hours versus somebody who's making pizza inside of the location. Is it drivers make way more? Is it about the same? What's your
Yeah, so first of all, let's talk about the third, because we never got there.
Okay.
So
Yes.
we talked about their hourly wage, their mileage, and then what we call device reimbursement for their cell phone use. And obviously, the last one is tips, which we've kind of
Oh, okay.
segued into.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Um, so when you consider all of those sources, and you bring up an interesting point in that, um, drivers, at least used to and probably still do, tend to make more money than assistant managers and managers. Um,
Interesting.
It is. So
Interesting.
what you end up with is you end up with like this weird situation where you've identified someone in your company that is really good and you would like them to become a member of management or leadership in one way, shape, or form. Um, and sometimes the money is too good as a driver to make that transition. Which is probably a secret I shouldn't be saying out loud, but I mean that's the reality.
Well, that's not just in, the hourly space. I mean, we see that a lot in Sprockets and others to SaaS tech technology companies, which the
Yeah.
best enterprise sales rep make so much more money than even the sales manager that when you say, hey, you're doing amazing, we want to
Yep.
bring you into management to help others. And they're like, no way, that's a 30% decrease in my salary. Like, why would I ever do that? Right. I'm better
Right.
off doing this sort of thing. But I think it's a
Yeah.
testament to, um, the earnings potential of working inside of Domino's or inside of, pizza delivery. Because
Yeah.
I mean, just from my small corner of the world, I feel like that's not that obvious to everybody that that's the case. Like it's kind of like a kept secret in a way.
Yeah. And I mean, you certainly do put a lot of wear and tear on your car. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
But yeah, even it's like I said, I was a driver when I was 18. I did it for a year from 18 to 19 before being recruited into management. But yeah, I mean, I was able to pay all of my bills without issue, just off the tips and mileage I would make. But yeah, so I mean, there is good money there. I will say, so we're kind of in the gig economy, right? Where people want to drive for Ubers or Postmates or any of those. What I would say is that driving for Domino's, generally speaking, you will make more money there because you're on the schedule and you're expected to come in because the volume is going to be there. Like you're going to show up and you're going to take 3, 4, 5 deliveries an hour, depends upon whether you're taking singles or doubles or triples. And you're going to do that for every hour that you're working. Whereas if you sign up for an Uber shift, you kind of, one, you don't know what the volume is going to be. And kind of more importantly, you don't know how many other people are also going to be doing that. And then therefore, making less available to yourself. So we do have people that come from that gig economy, like the Uber Eats and or Postmates, and become Domino's drivers for those reasons.
Yeah, and I see it from the hourly worker perspective, why it would be more stable, right? Understanding where to show up, where to be, and also some just continuity of this is where you pick up the food and you drive it within this distance. With Uber Eats, it's like you're in 5 different restaurants and battling, trying to find parking and all these different things. From an operator's perspective, because I'm sure you and others have crunched the numbers on, hey, does it make more sense for us to have our own in-house drivers, or does it make our own sense to, like, the alternative to that would be 100% we outsource to third-party delivery systems? Like, why is having the drivers in-house make more sense for you?
Yeah, so I think part of it is like controls, not quite the right word, but part of it is the control that you can schedule people and tell them like where and when they're needed. So I mentioned earlier that the Domino's sales model now is kind of delivery sales, carry out sales, and then aggregator sales. So I think it's important to point out that all of every single delivery out of a Domino's pizza store happens from a W-2 employee. So like even orders. So for example, we integrate with Uber Eats. Uber Eats is just the order delivery vehicle, if you will. So the order comes into the Domino's store through the Uber Eats storefront, but everything is made by a Domino's pizza person and everything is delivered by a Domino's pizza person. So if you order your pizza through Uber Eats, it's delivered by a Domino's pizza driver in a Domino's pizza uniform driving a Domino's pizza approved vehicle.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think, so first of all, it's not allowed to have third-party aggregators or just 1099 employees deliver food for you. They have to be approved, like go through all the proper training.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So like when you think about the future of delivery, particularly inside Domino's, because I know that you've been around that and you know that best.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Is it more W-2s? Is it straying more to the gig economy? Is it outsourcing everything to Uber Eats and Postmates? Like, where do you think it's going?
Man, so I think it's a little bit of both in that so I don't think the gig economy is going anywhere, but I think you can provide a gig workforce, like a W-2 gig workforce. And so how that works in a couple stores that are using something similar, is they kind of have these group of employees that are W-2'd employees, so they're fully Domino's Pizza employees, but they're not on the schedule.
Yeah.
And so what that franchise will do is they'll broadcast to that group of employees, and even employees that are on the schedule but aren't working that day. Hey, we have a shift tonight from 4 to 7. Who wants it?
Yeah.
And then in kind of a gig manner, just someone, and this works particularly well for college kids who are sometimes back home, sometimes at their school's campus. You're never quite sure where they are, but you can, hey, if you're home this weekend, we have a shift available for you. And so I think there's going to be a natural progression to more of that, where I don't think we'll break out of the just allowing anyone, if you will, for lack of a better term, to deliver our pizzas, but kind of improving the way in which we schedule and manage our existing team members.
It's like broadening the workforce to more of a community, right? Because like right now, the two ends of the spectrum are 100% of your people are third party. They come in, they leave without a
Yep.
W-2. The other end of that would be you have only W-2 employees and 100% of them are on the schedule for the next 2 weeks, right? And,
Correct.
I love the concept of bringing people in, making sure that they're properly trained, understand kind of the culture of the company that you're building, right? And understand kind of the dynamics of Domino's. And
Yep.
then making it looser than I think traditional norms in the sense you show up every day for work. It's like,
Right.
look, if I want to get trained at Domino's at my local location right here on Daniel Island in South Carolina, I can get trained, work there whenever they send me a text message that there's a surge of orders and they need some help, and go in and do it. That's interesting. I don't hear that very often in QSR and pizza. Is that unique to Domino's, or are you starting to see it and hear about it in other brands?
Um. Yeah. No. I think it's obvious. I mean, we try to stay on top of cutting edge technology, if you will. So
Yep.
I think it's in a few other brands. I don't think it's widely developed or used. But in a particular scenario like Domino's is, which is it has to be an employee. Um, I think it's a valuable addition to your workforce.
Yeah. Okay, because we are coming up on time. We usually
Hmm.
have these in and out in about 10 minutes, but we're 21 minutes in. So I think it
Okay.
speaks the value of conversation, all the great things you're sharing. Anything else you'd like to share with us just on the hourly workforce, or anything that comes to mind of things that you think that Domino's has done especially well to win the war on talent?
Man, well, Domino's has done a fantastic job technology-wise, like kind of engaging, especially the customer, um,
Hmm.
with like the pizza tracker and I know in colleges now, like the whole rebranding of our pizza, roughly a decade ago, and probably even more than that, worked out really well. But Domino's continues to attract, I think, just good talent. Just they're um, struggling for words here, but they're just a really good company to work for. I mean, I spent 35 years of my life in there, and I'm still involved in that aspect. Um,
Hmm.
but they, yeah, it's a great company to work for.
Love it. Okay, Shawn. Well, if somebody wants to learn more about you, Wizardline, which we didn't talk about, but what we always find is that when you have a good conversation, actually more people end up at your site than
Yep.
if you actually end up plugging it the whole time. So, needless to say, Sprockets and Wizardline have an amazing partnership, particularly through our Hourwork solution. Shawn and the Wizardline team does amazing work for Domino's operators and looking to expand into other brands with a bunch of different things. If Shawn, if somebody wants to learn more about what you guys do, it's the best way to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we have a website, and that's the best way to kind of learn about us and to contact us. So we're found at thewizardline.com. So wizardline, all one word.com.
All right.
And that's certainly where you'd be able to reach us.
Perfect. And we'll drop the links in the descriptions on YouTube and Spotify and all those different things. But Shawn, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
All right, thanks, AJ.